Okay. All right. Well, that was interesting. So this is the first time I'm doing a live stream, and it's complicated. But we'll go into that. So if you don't know who I am, I'm Mike Myers. I'm the creator of the channel Make It or Break It Now. What's my channel all about? It's about a whole bunch of different things, helping people with technology. And right now, this is the person that needs help with live streaming technology. Making and breaking things. I do costumes and cosplay, but I'm usually out there trying to test things and make them better for people, no matter what age they are. Because one of the things I found is that it's just not as easy sometimes as you think. My background is I worked for the US Navy as a civilian for 40 years. Yeah, I can't even believe it myself. Started out as a flight tester, went to test pilot school. That was fantastic. It was $1 million education. Learned a lot on how to fly things and basically how to evaluate things. After that, I became a science advisor, and I worked with the Marine Corps, and then I worked with the Navy at Fleet Forces Command and MAR-4 Command. So I got to work at the 4-star, 3-star, 2-star, general, admiral level, and that was pretty fantastic. Go out in the field, see things, do things that was beyond the aerospace piece of my experience. And then I ended up going to Office of Naval Research, and I ran the Science Advisor program for a while. And that was fantastic, trying to recruit people that are challenging to find, because the Science Advisor is a combination of political savvy and technical competence. And you would think that's easy to find, but according to people who work with Fortune 500 companies, that was one of the most challenging positions that they've ever had to fill as a consultant for us. So we came up with all sorts of creative ways on how to find those people, and we found them, and they're great, and they're doing amazing things today and ever since I've been involved with the program. And it's not just because of me, it's because they're very capable. I just helped them refine their skills, give them a little bit of the tools to help them succeed. And then I ran the Future Naval Capabilities program and the Innovative Naval Prototype program for the US Navy. We did things like railgun and and putting all sorts of amazing technologies out there. And I learned a lot about how hard it is to get things out there. So I see there are a couple of people have joined, and that's thanks a lot. And I'm here to answer any questions you have. Just wanted to kick it off like that. And if you don't know who I am, so why haven't I live streamed before? And there was a couple times where I was going to live stream and I didn't. Well, because it's complicated. You have to use second-party software, and I would like to think myself as technically savvy, and yet it's not always easy to get that information and figure it out. And you go to the videos that YouTube has, and it's like lots of hand waving, but that's typical for technology. How many times have you bought something and the instructions just basically say, oh, do this, do that, do this, and everything works out magnificently? We used to say that if you need a PhD person, a person that's got a doctorate in engineering or something like that, to send your system out to the fleet and forces, then it's probably not ready to go. And it was amazing how many of those systems are out there. So one of the things that I've tried to do is develop capabilities and help nourish and help people get the understanding that things don't have to be complicated. And when you develop something or you design something, and this is something that I learned in test pilot school, you really have to look at it, and we called it for the Nugget pilot, the person who has never been in the aircraft before. And so when you design something like this, and the first thing you got to do is like this is a 60 helicopter. And when I came into the Navy in 1985, this was brand spanking new. And now there's children of the test pilots that I worked with that are flying this aircraft. And when I first saw it, trying to get the camera right, when I first saw it in the hangar, it was amazing because I looked at the cockpit in all the gauges. It wasn't flat screens, it wasn't LEDs back then. And I looked at all the looked at the cockpit and I said, how in the heck does anybody fly something like this? I mean, this is a multi-million-dollar aircraft. And yet, a couple months into the job, I had the opportunity to fly one of these things for the first time. And was it easy? Not completely easy, but it was fun. And it was amazing how quickly, once you understand the concepts and the ideas of the technology, that you can make something work. But sometimes it's way more complicated than it has to be. So when I was working with technology for the Office of Naval Research, one of the things I tried to emphasize was if it's harder than downloading an app and using an app, then it's probably something that we need to think a little bit more about the user. So not seeing any questions yet, so I have some backup questions that I've pulled off various from the various feedback that I get from all my videos. So I'm just going to start going through these, and we'll just see how it goes as we all explore and learn about this live streaming concept. I mean, it's going to get better from here, trust me. So it says, given your background, what is one piece of naval engineering that you think would most improve everyday activities for your sailor or Marine? I think that reminds me of a situation where naval aircraft carriers. Do you know, even on the Ford, which is the brand new, most recent, Kennedy's still kind of working itself out, but the Ford that recently deployed for a very long time, do you know that aircraft carrier, arguably one of the most complex systems in the world, has fluorescent lights in the hangar bay that's up below the deck. And before they go and deploy, they have to replace all of those bulbs. And they're way up in the air, and so that's why they have to replace them, because the last thing they want to do is have any of those bulbs fail on deployment. And it's amazing how many bulbs there are on a ship, whether it's a destroyer, a carrier, a cruiser, things like that. And there are people dedicated, there are sailors dedicated, and their sole job is to go around and replace lights in the various spaces on a carrier. Now the Ford, beyond the hangar area, I've noticed that I did some research before this video, and I noticed that the Ford actually has LED lighting in the berthing spaces. That's where people sleep and live when they're not on duty. So that's a good thing, because when I was with the Navy, one of the things we did is we had a destroyer, and we had to invest around $100,000 to get LED lighting in a ship. And everybody agreed that it was an important thing to do because it would be efficient and you would never have to replace the bulbs. And those people that run around a ship trying to replace bulbs could do something more meaningful or do something more important than just going around and taking care of the systems. And so we had to invest, it was probably around $90,000, I recall, that so the Navy would invest the time to rewrite the specs and manuals to allow LED lighting on ships. You would think it's a no-brainer, but then again, consider the fact that there's a lot of complex systems in a carrier. And so if you move one thing or change one thing, it may affect a whole bunch of other things. When I went on the USS Eisenhower carrier, right after it came out of the yards, this was probably in the mid 2010s, it was interesting because they had LED screens, but behind all LED screens were cathode ray tube regular monitors, those green things that a lot of people don't even remember existed. And so they had the new technology and it was backed up by the old technology because they didn't completely trust the new technology. Just never know. So one of the things, so when I evaluate anything, whether it's a lawnmower, I've got some robot lawnmowers that I'm investigating right now for the next couple of weeks, and you'll see that video soon. I'm always looking at it from who's the user. Is it somebody, a teenager? Is it somebody in their 20s? Is it somebody in their 60s or their 70s or their 80s that may not be as tech savvy? You want them to be able to use the systems that you make and build, or you just decide that you don't want that part of the market, which I think is crazy. One of the things about YouTube that's good is they seem to be getting more and more into supporting and giving opportunities to people like myself now in their 60s to share their experiences. And I'm not talking AI slop. I'm talking about real people talking about real things and what they did. We can talk about AI slop in another video. Okay, so one of the biggest videos I have is the Discovery. And so the Discovery Shuttle. And it's at Uvar Hazy, which is outside of Dulles Airport. A lot of people have liked that video and the follow-up video where I get some really good close-up shots. And some people think, I got a question the other day, and it's like, how big is a shuttle compared to an aircraft carrier? Well, you can see for yourself if you go to New York City and you go to the USS Intrepid and they have the Enterprise shuttle, and I think it's on the forward part of the ship, and they have it in a contained area because shuttles are not designed to spend a whole lot of time out in the weather. So, and it pretty much takes up the whole forward part of the flight deck of the Intrepid. So if you ever get out to New York City, I would strongly encourage you to go check out that museum because I'm sure it's fantastic. Haven't gotten there yet myself, but someday I will. Okay, so saltwater, the ultimate breaker of tech. What is the best tip for protecting our outdoor workshop gear from rust and corrosion? Well, don't leave it out there. That's the first thing. I guess you could put it in some sort of cover or shelter. When I was working on the development of this is a tilt rotor UAV about the size of a Cessna 150. So if I was standing next to it, I would be about as tall or maybe a little taller than this. And the wingspan is pretty significant. It's about 20 feet. And the rotor span, if I recall, is about 5 to 6 feet. And so this was designed by Burt Rutan. Okay, if you don't know anything about Burt Rutan, he was one of the great innovators out in the Mojave Desert back in the 60s and 70s and 80s. And he developed 2 of these prototypes for us. And he made them with rapid prototype, which means they were not designed to military standards. And so the team I was working on at the time was Naval Air Development Center. They were concerned that this would never be able to go out on a ship. And the reason why is because it had spheres and the composite material that they used would not be, it wasn't going to be saltwater tight. All right. Now, this was never designed to be permanently out on a ship. But if you're on a ship, you have to have coatings and materials that keep saltwater or moisture intrusion or corrosion on happening to aircraft. So that's a real complicated thing. There's people that dedicate their entire lives and careers to things like that. And if you're interested, I can certainly do another whole video on that if there's interest, but it has a tendency to be a very complicated subject. All right, so here's another one. Is there any tech currently used on ships that you think would be in our homes in 10 years? Okay. That's an interesting question, and there's probably two answers to that. One is sometimes it's good to bring home to the ship, right? When you have people that are away from home, they want their video games. They want the ability to get access and talk back to home, right? If you can imagine, for the longest time, until the internet came and there actually was internet connections to ships, you went out on a cruise for 12 months, 11 months, 6 months, whatever it was, and you didn't have any connection to home. Now, when you went to a port, you might be able to call back on a phone or something like that from whatever international port you might be in. But can you imagine that you just don't have connection? So if something happened at home, you wouldn't hear about it unless you got it in the letter. And to think that in the 1980s, 1990s, even into the 2000s, ships didn't have that level of connectivity, there was two reasons for it. One, loose lips sink ships, and so there was always the concern that there would be too much information shared in open channels. I think they're getting over that, and there are certain things that they put in place to keep that from happening. But the other thing is that sometimes it was just too technically difficult. So getting things that reminded sailors and Marines of home was really important. So we would do things like that. We would work on technology that allowed fresh fruit and vegetables to be sustained on ships for much longer periods than before we got involved. I mean, little things like that, having fresh lettuce, having fresh bananas or anything like that more than a couple weeks into a cruise is really important for morale for sailors and Marines. Okay, what's the most indestructible piece of gear encountered during your time looking at naval technology? Well, there's not very many things that are indestructible in naval technology. And naval means the Navy side and the Marine Corps side. We used to laugh that if you put no step on an aircraft, like there's certain parts of an aircraft, like right here, where it says no step because it's a fragile composite. And if you put that on there, guess what? Sailors and Marines we used to say, is your system sailor or Marine proof? And odds are it probably wasn't. It takes time to ruggedize things and keep it so that they don't get destroyed by those really dedicated souls out there that are out to fix things as fast as they can. And sometimes they're in the zone to make things work. And sometimes they're not going to be careful because they're just trying to get up to where they need to do the job and get it done. So is there any indestructible naval technology out there? If used correctly, naval technology like aircraft can stick around for a very long time. If abused or taken out of the flight envelope, and it happens, but I mean, if you fly, there's aircraft here, there's aircraft, 60 helicopters or other things around that are 20 some odd years old. The B-52 bomber is way older than that. There's B-52 bombers out there that they think grandchildren are going to fly someday. So yes, if you maintain the technology, it's capable. Naval carriers are going to last 50, 60, 70 years on a regular op tempo. Now you take them to war, they get shot at, who knows? But a lot of the big infrastructure things that we have are fairly indestructible, but anything can be taken out given enough time and motivation. Okay, let's see. How do naval engineers handle cable management on a massive scale? Any tips for our messy workshops? Okay, well, it's not handled very well. If you go on an old ship, especially one that has gone into what we call been refurbished, like the carriers, every couple decades, or I can't remember exactly what their schedule is, but every ship will eventually need to go back into the yards and be worked and restructured, basically cleaned up and things like that. And what they found is that it's easier to run more cables and electrical lines or whatever it is in a ship than it is to remove it, because when it was built, it was typically built in sections for the last several decades, and basically they just hooked all those things up, and then you have like giant cables, just giant series of cables in a carrier or any kind of ship, a cruiser, destroyer, whatever it is, a submarine. And what happens is it's so difficult to try to remove that old cable that they just leave it in place and run a new one. So you can tell how old a ship is by how big the cables are that run in the spaces that you walk every day. So that's interesting. There was an interesting technology about 30 years ago where people had they would use, you can see it in Home Depot or Lowe's, where they had conduit, steel conduit. And what this company had come up with is they could blow lines using air pressure through this empty conduit. And then the theory was that you could take it out and replace it with a new line, optic fiber, whatever it is, if it was, if you wanted to do that. But again, it was just so complicated with all the angles and things like that in a ship through the bulkheads that they just decided it was just not going to work in the long term. Maybe on a several case situation, but not consistently throughout the fleet. Aircraft and ship design is very complicated, and that's why it takes so long to make any of these things, and that's why it costs so much money. But if anybody ever gets a chance to go out on a carrier or go on a nuclear sub, underway on a nuclear sub like I have, the first thing that comes to mind, and I checked with other people because I thought I was the only one thinking this, is these things cost billions with a B dollars. And everybody who goes and has that experience says, now I completely understand why these things cost billions of dollars, because what they can do is absolutely amazing. And I'll do some videos probably about the carrier and the submarine tours I had, and talk a little bit of the details and fun things I learned there. Okay, let's see. What's the most surprising? Okay, what is the most surprising engineering fail you've ever seen in a high-tech environment? Okay, so I think I touched on this a little earlier in the live stream. Probably the most surprising fail is how complicated people who design technology, how complicated it is. My neighbor just got a Tesla, and he took me for a drive in a Tesla, and it was amazing that my neighbor got in and I was in the passenger seat, and he just pushed a couple buttons. It was a brand new car for him, so he was still learning about it. And the car drove itself. It drove itself down the street. It backed itself out of the driveway. It had all sorts of sensors. It was absolutely amazing. Now, I know people are, like all over the place on Tesla. Some people like them, some people don't. But the fact that it was designed to be simple is the key to the success of technology. If this was too complicated, if you needed a PhD or a master's degree in engineering, mechanical engineering, or electrical engineering to use this device, it would not be as popular as it is today. Now, do all the people that work on apps get it right? No, there's a lot of horrible apps out there too. But you just gotta, if you're gonna develop technology, one of the things I've always talked to industry and to the science advisors or the people that were developing industry in Office of Naval Research is I always kind of bang the drum saying, please make it simple to use. Make it so that when somebody's completely exhausted, they can safely operate the machinery and it's not going to work against them. Now, is AI going to solve all our problems? Absolutely not. AI brings a whole slew of new problems, just like the internet did. But will it change things and hopefully get people to think in a different way? I think it's already done that, and it's going to continue to do that. But as a user, you also don't want to just sit back and have the machine control everything either. That's not good either. So you owe it to yourself to become an educated user of anything that you're doing. And so, just like you try to take care of your body, eat the right foods, don't do, the wrong things, don't run out in traffic or anything like that. Same thing with technology. You want to be able to get up to speed on technology. You want to see what's going on out there and just try to figure out what best works for you. And if it doesn't work for you, either work with people or share it with people in an educated way as best as you can to help them improve the systems. And that's what I do. I'm also doing a lot of surveys and giving feedback to YouTube and trying to figure out things and make it easier for them. And trust me, after this experience with a live stream, they're going to get a lot. Hopefully, I'm going to be able to give them a lot of feedback in ways that we can improve the system. So live streaming doesn't have to be as complicated and hard as it is. Okay. You've done a lot of honest reviews on Ego, Lawnmower, and Blink and other security systems. What's the biggest red flag you're looking for when you test new gear? Okay, so there's two things. I think I've already touched on that a lot, is usability of the technology. How easy is it to turn on, turn off, to maintain? And the second thing is, how rugged is it? Has it been marine or sailor proofed? There's a lot of products that people just kind of throw out there and say, hey, pay me a couple of $100 and I'll give you this thing. It's going to work great. And the marketing looks great, and all the pictures and even some of the videos and reviews look fantastic. But when you actually get the gear and start working with it, it just doesn't add up. It doesn't work. I do a lot of evaluations of technology, and the things you see on my video or the things you see on my channel are the successful ones. I consult with a lot of companies and have consulted with companies for decades and how to improve things and how to make them better. And it doesn't have to be complicated. Here's a perfect example. Okay. I worked on when I was a science advisor, and this was before we went into Iraq many, many moons ago. There was this thing called a phraseolator that was like an oversized smartphone, because they really didn't have smartphones then. It was almost like a mini tablet. And you would speak in there, and then it would translate, and then hopefully you could send that out to people. Well, that was complicated, and the phraseolator is not around anymore. That technology in a lot of the research that was done is around, and that's what you see in Google Translate and other things like that. So all the investment of time and money to try to get translation to be better is in there. It was, that investment was never lost, just like a lot of research and development, but it's complicated. There was a situation, this is what I'm going to share here. There was a situation where this gent came to us, and he was proposing possibly using point and talk, what they call point and talk cards. Okay. And so he had all these things, and they had phrases. And so he was a traveler, and he found just a regular traveler, and he found that he could make these point cards, and he could go into a French restaurant. Even though he didn't speak French, he could point to something on the menu like chicken and a sauce and a drink, or where's the bathroom? And then people would nod their head and he would pretty much get to where he needed to go. Well, imagine in a very confusing military environment, right? So the phrasellator requires batteries. If you drop it, it may break. Well, here is a very simple technology, and we worked really hard to get this in place. And it's like the phrasellator, but with no batteries. And so we had all sorts of things. So if you were talking to somebody, trying to do this here on camera, talking to somebody, you could point to different things. There was a medical version. I think I have that here somewhere. There was a medical version that you could use with people who couldn't speak English, and that's being used in hospitals. But again, a very simple technology. And the great thing about this, when we took it out in the theater 20 years ago, the feedback we had was amazing. They loved this. It actually saved lives, believe it or not. A little simple technology, a little simple piece of kit like this. And they liked the laminated version, the Marines did, because they could lay it out on their lap or lay it on the ground, which was just dirt or sand or whatever it is, and they could eat their MREs and things like that on that. So this is a multi-tool, believe it or not, and it was very inexpensive. We got these down to about $3 a piece, and the gent who came in my office, he became a millionaire. I didn't get any bonus for that, but he became a millionaire because he helped us design things that are now prolific. And you can just put this in anybody's pocket. It's there, and you can point to it. Any area of the world that we might be deploying troops or sailors, Marines, Air Force people, whatever it is, they can use these cards. They'll have them by the dozens, put them in their pocket. And if all else fails, electronics go down, jamming, whatever it is, this will work for them. So not all technology has to be complicated or battery operated. Okay, let's see. Many viewers are worried about battery life on the long run. Based on your test, which brands are actually built to last 5 years? Well, that's a very good question. I think there's very few brands out there that are designed to last for 5 years. One of the things I do know is that just like your computer that you might be seeing this on, or your phone, the more you cycle a battery, the more the the life of the product goes down. That's because with every recharge, the battery basically gets little. Let's see I'm trying to think of the best word here. It gets impurities. There's the one. That's one. Okay, so because we're being general here. So the batteries will build up impurities, and eventually they'll just not be able to make the connection. They won't be able to hold the charge. And we've all seen that in one way or another. Rechargeable batteries are much better in many ways than regular batteries that you buy and they use them once and then they throw away. And the reason for that is, first of all, it's not good for the environment. Second of all, those things can corrode. Rechargeable batteries, for the most part, are very reliable. Now, you hear the stories about them catching on fire on aircraft and things like that. Yes, some batteries can overheat and will overheat especially in hot conditions. You won't see that on cold conditions, most likely. But if it's a battery that's been charged a whole bunch of times, again, it will build up that impurities and it will be harder to charge and it will heat up probably more. So you got to be careful about that. Now, how can you do things on batteries? Well, here DJI, who does these drones, is basically these are some batteries I charged 2 or 3 weeks ago, and look at that. They keep going down, and so what happens is they'll slowly degrade down so that it minimizes the amount of impurities that are built up per charge, and the batteries will last longer. If you keep batteries in your house, as opposed, for example, the lawnmower batteries, it seems like one of the biggest factors is being charge them when they're warm or running them all the way down on the lawnmower batteries. That doesn't seem to be a good thing based on all the feedback I've gotten from people. And the other thing is not charging them periodically. So obviously, in many parts of the country, you will not have to use your lawnmower in December or January or February, but you probably want to charge those batteries for the lawnmower during that time, so they basically don't develop a memory. Now, some of the modern batteries are really good at not developing a memory, but that memory, like I mentioned, sometimes the impurities build up and then you won't be able to charge it above 20% because that's where the memory is on the batteries. They're getting better on battery technology, and the more they go solid state, the better it's going to be. There's a lot of investments in battery technology, and it's just going to get better over a period of time. Lithium-ion batteries, for the most part, are very reliable. They don't heat up. They don't crash airplanes, but there's always a chance, or if you have so many of them out there, statistically, 0.0001% of the time, something's going to happen on any system. And that's what you see on those batteries. And unfortunately, that's what you see in the news when one gets warm or starts doing crazy things in an airplane, and everybody gets concerned for the right reasons. But if you think about the number of batteries out there being used, it's still amazing how well batteries work in general. Okay, let's see. Okay, in smart tech, making DIY harder or easier? Blink, Simply Safe debate. Okay, so if you've been watching my videos, you'll notice that I originally, about 18 months ago, maybe a little longer, year and a half, about a year and a half ago, I put a Simply Safe system into my house. That was a combination of motion sensors, cameras, and door detectors and window detectors, where basically if you break that magnetic connection, it would send a sensor to your app, and then the app would tell you where it has been violated, and then you can hook up all sorts of subscriptions so that it can be monitored 24/7, and somebody from who knows where in the world will contact the police or speak through the speaker on your camera outside, and hopefully get people to not do the things they were doing. But what I found is Simply Safe is, and I bought this system on my own, and I'm not being sponsored in Simply Safe, and I probably won't ever be sponsored by Simply Safe. And Simply Safe has some drawbacks because they haven't kept their technology up, and a lot of security systems basically sell the technology to you at cost. And what they want is to get you to do the subscription, because whether you or 100 of your neighbors basically get into a subscription, it doesn't cost them any more once you've got the tech, okay? And they make monthly, they make a lot of money on a monthly subscription. You can spend $50, $60 on a Simply Safe system or even a Blink system, and you'll get the kind of coverage you want, or maybe you won't. It depends on your situation. But sometimes it's overkill. The Blink system that I got in November during the great Amazon days, I've used that, and I'm convinced that motion detection with cameras is the system that most people need. It will give you everything you need, and it won't give you any kind of false indications. One of the things about the Simply Safe that I didn't like is that the batteries on all those little magnetic connectors for your doors and your windows are supposed to last 5 years. Well, of the 20 we have, 20 or so that I got, 5 of them have already failed. And some of them failed within the first month. So that's not good, because then you have to replace the battery, which is a pain, or the system's not functioning the way they promised it to function for you. Now, the Blink system so far has been great, because all the batteries that they have in their little pieces of technology are supposed to last around 2 years. Now, if you have a front door where there's a lot of in and out, a lot of the sensors constantly being triggered, then that's going to wear down the batteries a lot faster than say a back door that nobody ever goes through, that sensor could last more than 2 years. And the one in the front door, well, I don't want to jinx myself here, but so far it's been about 8 months and they're all going strong. So that's good. But the other thing that Blink does, and I don't know if they're going to do this anymore because some of their new technology doesn't go with this, with the sync. They have a sync option where you can put in a micro SD card and you can basically be your own monitoring service. You still get all the warnings and things like that through the app on the phone, but you control the system and it costs you $0 for a subscription. So if you were going to look at any kind of security system for your home, apartment, whatever it is, spend some time on Blink and see if it's going to work for you. I can't figure out every little everybody's got their own unique situation, but for most people, I think the Blink system is going to be a lot more effective than Simply Safe and some of those other systems out there. Okay, here we go. What's the one tool in your workshop that you've made because the commercial version just broke too easily? Okay, that's an interesting question. Let's see. Well, here's one. A lanyard for your phone. These things are crazy expensive. And for $1, probably 50 cents worth of stuff, this is a 200-pound paracord. This is a piece of nylon string that goes through the little hole on my protector here. And then I just have because I have a bunch of vinyl tubing, I have it like this. And the great thing about this is you can just strap it in place. It does everything I want it to do, right? I can swing it around and hopefully it won't fall off now and break something. But, here I am, can swing it around. Somebody wants to take it from me. It's going to be a little harder. If you're on a metro or some sort of subway system, I've seen people pull phones out of people's hands or they drop it. All that stuff protects your phone. So for 50 cents, and you can make a lot of these pretty cheaply, this to me is as good as anything that you can get. In Amazon, I know they probably sell something at this point that's almost, it's $1. So some people will sit there and say, well, I don't want to go through the time of making this thing. But there is a certain satisfaction of coming up with a solution that works. The other thing is probably camera equipment. Like I have a monitor over here, a monitor stand that I made because I wanted something that was reliable. I took the little spinny, the 5-legged spinny thing under a regular business chair that had broken. I pulled that off. I put a conduit tube, a 1-inch conduit tube. I'm looking at it right now. And now that thing works great. I have all sorts of camera gear, booms and things like that I made that I use every time, every day, and it works fantastically. So camera equipment, that's probably one of the things that I use all the time. I'm trying to think of something else. Oh, just little things like this, right? So here's some of my quadcopters, but you'll see that I've added red tape, okay? So little things like this can be a big time saver, and you really don't see this anywhere that you can buy. So why do I do this? Well, for 2 reasons. One, because one time I tried to take off with this with the cover on, and that didn't work. So what happens if I turn on this thing and for some reason I forget to take the cover off, I see red, all right? So red is not natural in most environments. And so if you take this cover off and you put it somewhere, it's going to be really easy to find, okay? The other thing is I put red, I haven't done it to guess to this thing yet because it's pretty new. I put red on all my quadcopters, okay? And there's 2 reasons for that. The first reason is if it crashes somewhere and it's underneath leaves or something like that, again, the red will stick out, okay? The other thing is red, birds don't like red. So if for some reason your quadcopter is going to get attacked by birds, and it happens put some red, this is just red electrical tape. I know people that use reflecting red tape. I've just used red electrical tape. And that's what I learned from my flight testing days. Because if you look at any flight test aircraft back in the day, or any kind of test, any kind of test things that were hanging on an aircraft, we usually put red or orange paint or tape or something on there so that we could identify them. Because when you don't, you can't find the stuff that was lost. There was a great situation where we were developing something with the 60 helicopter down at Sikorsky out in West Palm Beach, and this was like, oh boy, 35 years ago. And they were using a Black Hawk helicopter, and the Black Hawk helicopter is designed to blend in with the environment. Okay, and so what happened was, and it doesn't really matter what happened, how it happened, but what happened was the test pilots took off in the Black Hawk helicopter with the system that they were testing, and they were not very far away from the runway, and they put the aircraft down and the aircraft crashed. And nobody could find them because the Black Hawk helicopter, which is designed to blend in with the environment, blended in with the environment. So from that point on, every time a Black Hawk helicopter, or even a 60 helicopter, was going to go into an environment, they usually, like I said, used red paint or orange paint. Fluorescent orange paint was a big deal in order for it to stand out. So little things like this, little things that cost very little but are very helpful, are some of the things that I do all the time to solve problems that I can't find anywhere else. Okay, let's see what else here. For home security, do you still stand by ditching subscriptions, or has the tech changed recently? Now, I think if you can do something, the apps nowadays on the security systems are so good, and if you can get one like Blink that, at least for now, with their Sync X, they have a sync version that you can't do this with, but if you can get one, hello, Cheese Smells, nice to see you. And I know I'm going to do this. Kleiner Note Hex, I know you watch all my videos, and you certainly bring lots of great comments, so thank you very much for watching the video. So anyway, if you can do a security system without a subscription, I think you're so much better off. And you should look into it. Now, will it work for everybody? No, there's people that are still going to want that comfort of the subscription. And sometimes the minimal subscriptions are not that much. Blink has one that's, I think, $5 if they haven't changed it for one sensor. That would be like for a doorbell, and $10 for multiple sensors. And then it goes up from there. Simply Safe just starts out really expensive and then just keeps going. So, all right, let's see. What's the most expensive gimmick you've ever tested that turned out to be a total waste of money? Okay, well, I had a situation. I was collaborating with a company, and I'm not going to say their name, and I'm not going to talk too much about it because I'm not about destroying brands. I think the technology has a lot of potential, but it's just not there yet. And sometimes that's the case. But what is the one? Let's see, the most expensive gimmick. Well, I would say some things change over time, right? I think that, and it depends on who you are. I think that the smartwatches were expensive gimmicks for the longest period of time. But I think that they are developing, and the price is coming down because there's so much competition, that maybe smartwatches that do all sorts of health monitoring are a good thing. I think I don't think I have it here, but oh yeah, actually I do. I'm probably going to get in trouble for this. Hey, Kimball 1430, nice to see you. Okay, these glucose monitors are a real expensive gimmick, and Why is that? They serve a purpose. And when they work, they're awesome. But Abbott Labs, a billion with a B company, their apps are horrible, right? And so here's a great concept. It's not a gimmick, but it's a great concept and great piece of technology with a horrible app. And that happens so much. A lot of originally the Insta360 cameras, the 360 cameras, were great hardware, but horrible software. So in general terms, it's not necessarily that the product is bad. It's the integration or the software piece, tied to the hardware piece. So there you go. All right. So Kimball 1430. Anyone have any good buys for USA anniversary hats that are high quality, made in America? Let's see. Well, baseball caps. There's a whole bunch of them out there, and you'll pay a little bit more, but the quality is usually better for a U.S. made baseball cap. A lot of flags, U.S. made. Now, there's a whole bunch of discussion, and I've had a couple videos on flags. Valley Forge, the ones you can buy at Costco for $33. I think Lowe's sells it for a little more expensive than that. But a really good quality cloth Valley Forge flag, to me, for $33 is a great idea. I'd like to get one for my dad for Father's Day. Well, yeah, then go to Costco. If it's a hat, then he was in the Navy. Oh, he wants something nautical. Well, patches are a big thing. Okay. This is a test pilot school patch. People who have been in the military, patches are great, keepsakes. Also coins. Coins are great keepsakes. These are given away. This was done by Dr. Schutte. I don't think he'll be offended if I use something like this. But he gave a coin, and he was the director of innovation at the time. And this coin is great because it opens bottles. So the great thing about, so a coin, a memorable coin, it really depends on the person. It doesn't have to be nautical. I'm seeing a lot of Army hats, but not Navy. Look around. I mean, US Navy has Amazon has a lot of hats on it. A lot of the hats that I've gotten with the military were given to me, and that's why they are really great things. Let me show you. And you've seen this on my videos. So you'll see these two hats, right? These were made in the United States. The Boeing company, Bell Helicopter. Ooh, Boeing. I don't want to say that. Bell Helicopter came up with these hats. And you'll see these, and these are 30 some odd years ago, and they're still holding up great. But these are the hats and part of the, kind of the part of the stuff that you get when you're working on projects. And that was for this one, the Bell Eagle Eye, the tilt rotor UAV, right? So this came out way before any of the great stuff that's out there now. I mean, it's amazing. This thing that was the size of a Cessna 150, everything that this thing can do, this thing did. And it cost $5 million to make a prototype of this. And this I bought for under $1,000. So there's technology for you. This was probably, 90s. So 30 some odd years ago, a couple of years ago. And it's amazing what you could do. But anyway, anything that's memorable. Let's see. Real feels like I'm sitting with a friend having a nice conversation. Well, thanks, Cheese Smells. Yeah, love to know why you're called Cheese Smells, and that's probably a great conversation we could probably have on the side. But yeah, thank you. I'd like to have conversations like this. I've been wanting to do live streams like this for a very long time. It's just trying to figure out the technology. It's not as easy as everybody thinks it is. Okay, let's see here. What else? Okay, talked about the gimmick. There's some other questions. You often find fixes for $5. What's the secret to finding cheap solutions for inexpensive looking problems? Okay, well, this one is a crazy, okay. What I have found in being an aerospace engineer, working with the Navy, working with the Marine Corps, things like that, the solutions to problems are sometimes way closer than you think, and they don't cost that much money. There's a lot of times when I'm building something in my videos, and what you see in the end state, I shake my head and I said, why couldn't I have figured this out 3 months ago or 6 months ago? Or sometimes I'll have a project or an idea I've been working on for years, like 2-3 years. And then all of a sudden I'll have a funky dream, or I'll see something as I'm scrolling through, or I'm in Costco or the grocery store or something like that. And then all of a sudden that idea pops in my head and I've got this problem solved, right? So I'm hoping, and this is, I wish I could have an AI that would just be, kind of like what Tony Stark had, Edith or whatever you want to call it, and just basically say, okay, and a virtual me as a partner. So you can say, okay, here's all the stupid things I did, and here's all the crazy long times that I had, or I didn't think as fast as I could. Look at all my solutions and tell me what a good option, 5 good options, and then kind of shoot that development process down. But sometimes, just like biking across the United States, it's the journey that gets you to the solution. So sometimes you have to do a lot of expensive things and prototype a bunch of stuff before you get to the easy, best answer. Okay, let's see. Jarvis would be sick. Yeah, sure it would. And I think it's coming to that, right? I will tell you, I don't want to go down an AI rabbit hole. I think we all get tired of that. Not all AIs are built the same. The one that Microsoft has is not very good. I use Google's AI a lot, but remember, if people seem to forget that Google, that's doing crazy good stuff right now, they were the ones that had all sorts of wacky things happen 4 or 5 years ago. We don't need to go into all the details, but they were taking history and was taking it in an entirely different direction, which wasn't accurate. And now I've noticed that every time I do a Google search, whether it's on YouTube or on Google, in general, Google AI, it says there's this little thing printed down in like 8 font that says AI is not always accurate. Okay, that's their get out of jail free card, I guess. Let's see, the one for the public is garbage. Which one is that? Yeah, in OpenAI, I just don't trust. I don't trust OpenAI. I don't like the folks that are running the company. And so, it's funny. If you look at any of the commencement speeches, they brought in all these high-tech people for the commencement speeches, and they are so out of tune. The people that are developing AI, again, who's the user? Who are the people that are going to benefit from AI, right? So, if you look at those commencement speeches, and Bill Maher did a great thing on Friday about this yesterday on his show, and he said basically, look at all these knuckleheads that are doing commencement speeches, and they think they're resonating, but they're not, because if you get this mindset, right, and you're hanging around with the same people all the time in Silicon Valley or wherever it is, guess what? You're going to think you got all the right answers, and you're going to think you know everything that the Iowa farmer wants. A lot of times when we were developing things with the Navy, we would sit there and say, and we were worried about sensitivities, about how this might be play out in the press. We did. We didn't say, what's the Silicon Valley person think? We didn't say, what's the New Yorker think? What's the person in Florida think? We said, Iowa corn farmer. We said that all the time. We said, what's that Iowa corn farmer going to think about this technology? What's that Iowa corn farmer going to think about how we're deploying this technology? And, is it going to resonate with them? Is it going to be $1 million solution? Is it going to be worth it? Because the Iowa corn farmer pays a heck of a lot of taxes, right? They're not getting that Silicon Valley advantage where, they've got great accountants and things like that. The heart of the country. It's amazing how many people that are coming up with the solutions are sitting on the coast, right? And they're developing them in a vacuum. Or they say, hey, I came up with this great idea. And they talk to all their other Silicon Valley friends. And, it's one of those things where they all just say, wow, that's a great idea. Yeah, that's a great idea. And so they get into their own echo chambers. And that's what they come up with. I would love every Silicon Valley person to take and ride their bikes across. I think everybody should ride their bike across country. But I mean, when I rode my bike across country, you started in Los Angeles, I ended in Boston. But it was that time through the center of the country where you really got to experience what most of America is like and what most of America thinks. And quite frankly, they don't care about a lot of the crazy things that people are doing or saying or echo chambering in the press. Okay, they are too busy growing corn or making ends meet and all that stuff. They don't have the time or the luxury to sit there and just get crazy and think about stuff, right? Well, enough of that. I mean, that could be a whole live stream unto itself. Let's see, ChatGPT, etc. Yeah, I'm guessing the fact that there's so many autistics in tech, they would not be able to identify with the masses. No. I think, okay. I know quite a few autistic people. And I think they're more compassionate than anybody gives them a sense for, right? I think what happens is that I think it's the echo chamber thing. I think if you get enough people around you that make you think, herd mentality, riot mentality, a lot of great, halfway decent average people do crazy things when they're surrounded by a bunch of people that are telling them what to do or that think like they do. Okay, let's get off that topic. Let's see, any games you like? Any games I like? You're talking about games like baseball or football, cheese smells. I love hockey. I'm a big hockey person. All my kids did hockey since they were a little kid, and I think that hockey is first of all, it's amazing. If you think about the concept of hockey, it's absolutely amazing. You're putting razor blades on your feet, sharp, like sharp weapons on your feet. You've got a long stick, and you're flinging around this puck. And I think I have a puck here someplace. Oh, here we go. It's actually a Capitals puck. Yes, and you're flinging around this puck at 90 miles an hour, and tell me, it hurts. It hurts. If you've ever been hit by a puck or a baseball or anything like that, it hurts. And so, I love games and sports. I'm a big sports and games person. Let's see, other games. I like chess. Any kind of strategic game. I do find that video games are time sucks, right? Because you get stuck in that thing, and then you're never going to succeed. You never win. Back when I was growing up and video games were new, you could get to the end of a game, right? And then you could all high five yourself, and then you go off and do other things. But nowadays, games just don't ever end. Call of Duty, that campaign that probably lasted a couple days can go on for weeks, months, years. It's crazy. So yeah, I like games. I like challenges. I like mental puzzles. So If that's a game, I like that. How's that? Hopefully that answers your question. All right, let's see here. What's the next gutter blower 3.0 update? Okay, so I think that one's referring to, I did some gutter blowers, with using not vinyl tubing, and that worked out great. And then I put a camera. Oh yeah, here we go. Put a GoPro camera on top of the thing so I could see as I'm blowing it out. So I've done 2.0. I think I could make it bigger, and maybe I will. We'll see. But the gutters that I'm managing, they're pretty much the height that there is. You could expand it to 2 or 3 times. The only problem is then this, especially when you put a camera on there, that moment arm gets kind of a little crazy to wield. So you'd have to have a way of holding on to it. And that's why I developed that little handle with the rope. And you can see the video. Just look it up. It's there. Let's see. One game I like is the Portal games. They are great puzzle games. Oh, okay. Okay, now you got me thinking here. Okay, so let me tell you about something I really like. All right, so now you're talking. I think I got where you're going here. Okay, so games, this is the kind of games I like. These games, okay? These are totally immersive things, right? Any kind of game that has a virtual reality, I'm all in. Let's see, they are great puzzle games. Yeah, and there's a lot of puzzle games with this. But the other thing I like about this is the virtual presence. Okay, so I'm very into virtual presence. I got into 360 cameras, and I've done a whole bunch of videos. They haven't been really popular because I think people don't like wearing this gear, and I get it. And so that's why I bought this extension, and it's really been comfortable. But I'm going to I've got all sorts of, UAVs, little quadcopters, and I'm going to get that 360 Havana eventually because I like the virtualness of this technology. I'm a big fan of Maine, and I've always loved it since I was there when I was a little kid. And so this technology shows so much promise. And eventually it's going to get down to Neo glasses from Matrix. But it's kind of heavy and bulky now, but it's only going to get better. And I know it's Meta and Facebook and it's the Zuck and, there's all sorts of goodness and not so goodness about that. But the technology and what it can do, I think is fantastic. I took a lot of the lighthouses I love in Maine, and I've posted those videos, and you can check out my site and see. And those videos are fantastic. If you ever wanted to feel what it's like to be at a lighthouse, a lighthouse you see in calendars and just you dream about. I've done some of the best, most of the main lighthouses I've done a 360 so that you can look at it and just bring yourself back, have virtual presence, right? So to me, virtual presence is a big deal. And that's kind of like a game. And by the way, you don't need that big system to look at those 360 videos. You can look at it on your phone. And I have something over here that you can put your phone in and have something a lot cheaper. Now, is that as good as this thing? No, probably not. But you can sit in a chair and you can look around and you can get yourself in that kind of mode. I really think that 360 videos are they're not, especially people with PSTD. I can see a lot of folks or people that just want to take themselves out of their environment, right? I'd love to go to Maine every day, and I can't, right? I did the rafting trip down the Grand Canyon when in my 20s, and one of the things that it was like a 8-day rafting trip. We started at the Phantom Ranch and then we finished out at the end of the canyon. And one of the things that we all agreed to was it's just too much awesomeness to take in, right? Because every little turn of the river, you would sit there at the Colorado River, you would sit there and say, oh, another amazing venue. And then you get to the point where you're saying, you get 8 days of this full immersion of this awesomeness. Wouldn't it be great if you could take 2 minutes of that time and sample it every day? I mean, how would that make your life feel, right? So that's what this technology has the possibility of doing, right? And now it's all over the floor. Great, I'll pick that up later. Okay, let's see. Okay, so let's get back to these questions. I have a tendency to veer off on things like this. Which project has been the biggest challenge for you to film so far? Okay, well, I think, all right. Okay, well, you asked the question. Let's see if I can do this without breaking it. Come on now. This project has been the hardest thing to film with the least amount of views. Let's just put it that way, right? And there's a whole bunch of reasons for it, maybe. By the time I got this out on my video, Harry Potter, J.K. Rowling, there was all sorts of silliness going on there. But this is an accurate version of Harry Potter's wand. Extremely, almost, it's screen accurate. I tried to do as best job as I could, right? But it's made out of a galvanized nail, and it can open a bottle of your choice. It can open a can, and it can champagne, like when they break the top off of champagne bottles. That can be done by this. And thanks, Cheese Mouth. See, I never had tried VR before, but okay. So anyway, getting back to this. I spent a lot of time coming up with this design. This thing rattled around in my brain for the longest time. And I really thought this was going to take off. I mean, it's Harry Potter, blah, blah, blah. There's a lot of, back in the day, maybe they don't do that much anymore, but Potterheads, they would get married, all this stuff. And so I was thinking, hey, this would be great. Everybody can break open the thing. It makes it really easy to break open a champagne bottle or a soda bottle, whatever it is that you want to celebrate with. And yet very little views. So you just never know. Some of the things, like my shower, I'll tell you, I repaired my shower upstairs, right? And I wasn't even going to film it. I was like, but then I said to myself, this could be helpful to other people. So I'm going to film it. And so I did. I took about 6 minutes to show what I did. And then I, edited, probably took me a couple hours to edit, posted it up. And it's one of my most popular videos. And I didn't spend hardly any time on it. So that's the foibles or the craziness of YouTube, is you just never know what things are going to fail and what things are going to rock. I don't look at this as a failure. I'm very happy with this design. I couldn't be happier, but it just didn't resonate for some reason as a video. Okay, let's see. I never tried VR before, but sounds great. I think I'll be neat if 2 Portal games. Yeah, you can do that with a lot of games. You can be anywhere in the world and get together and do a VR game. That's the great thing about it. Okay, let's see. We're over an hour and a half here. So let's see. Probably the biggest challenge. Okay, I did that. You traveled 3,600 miles across America. How did that experience change how you look at reliable gear? Well, well, 36 years ago when I did bicycle across America, there wasn't that much gear, right? It was a fundraising trip, and so it cost $7,000, or it cost $5,000 to do it. I raised $5,000 for charity, and I paid for my way to go. But there was no cell phones, there were no iPads, you didn't even have digital cameras. You had film cameras One guy who was the corporate CEO of a medical company had a cell phone, and that was only so his mothership could keep a hold of him and answer questions. But the rest of us had little cycle computers. And so, I don't think that the technology and reliable gear was an issue. I did a bicycle ride in Australia where we were tent camping and it rained every day. And so having all your gear wet was a major problem. But it just rained so much and we were so wet all the time. And everywhere we put our tents up, it was wet. And we stood in line for food and it was wet. If you felt more like you were in some sort of military campaign. It was a great experience. Don't get me wrong. And I'll probably talk about that someday. But yeah, dry gear is really, really important. When I rode my bicycle across the United States for 47 days, it only rained twice. It was 2 isolated rain showers, and I got wet both times. But there were people that rode all the way across the United States on their bicycle and never got a rain shower. Is that crazy or what? Okay, let's see. And if you want to see my video, I put a video together last couple of weeks on the bike ride because it was the 36th anniversary. But one of the things that there's a lot of things I took away from that experience. But one is age is just a number. Most of the people on the ride, we had 52 people. Half of them were my age now. And I was a snarky 20-something guy when I did my bike ride. And I always thought that by the time you get to this age, 64, that you would be, and you'd be just like, everything would hurt and you wouldn't want to do anything, blah, blah, blah. And nothing could be farther from the truth. And these were not super athletes. These were average people. Check out the video. You'll see all that stuff there. Let's see. What's the best way for the community to send you project ideas or gimmick products to test? Gimmick products. Okay. Well, you can send it to makeitOrbreakitnow@gmail.com, or you can leave a comment on a video. And I try to look at all my comments, and I respond to the ones that are at least halfway decent. If you get way too negative, maybe I'll let you hang there for a while, because I'm a family channel, even though none of my videos are made for children. And it's not that I do any stuff that's not appropriate. It's just an Amazon thing, or it's a YouTube thing. So I just make it or break it now, all one word, at gmail.com is an easy way to send me something. And I get a lot of people. I guess I'm fortunate. I get a lot of people that want me to try their stuff, and I'm pretty picky about it because it's a time commitment. And even I've gotten a lot of shorts lately that people say, hey, just spend 60 seconds, blah blah blah. If you saw my recent video on the mulch coating, which was very successful, and that one took a lot of time, not because it took a lot of time to put the mulch coating down, but there was a timing constraint in the instructions that I wasn't aware of, that it couldn't rain for 72 hours after you put the glue down, the mulch glue or the mulch coating or whatever it is. So that became complicated from the standpoint that I had to predict the weather for the next 3 or 4 days and then try to squeeze that video in. So, I'm just real careful about what I take on now, because everything that I evaluate is a time commitment. And, I'm retired, and so I have time, but it's just a matter of what I want to spend my time on. How's that? And I want to stay in shape and all that kind of stuff too, and have a life. All right, let's see. Are you going to do more versus, wet forge versus pressure washer? People love the data. Okay, so I think that I do versus when they come to me. I actually have 2 robot lawnmowers. One's en route and should be in here in the next day or so. And the other one is sitting ready to go. It's in its charging port. And I'm going to, I'm working with Navimo, the Segway people, and they are sending me 2 robot lawnmowers, and they want me to do a side-by-side comparison. So that'll be kind of a versus. Both lawnmowers, well, the one I have, which is the I-210, is pretty impressive. I'm telling you, I like cutting grass, and I know a lot of people do, but if you can get something that does it for you, and and yeah, the price is a factor, but if you get something that can do it for you, and so you don't have to worry about it, it's worth looking into. And so I have the 210, and then the 2i, which has LiDAR, kind of like a wacky autonomous car. So we're gonna test those out. That'll be a little bit of a versus. And I have some other ideas in my head. I don't want to give them all away. But if anybody has ideas for videos or versus videos, please put them in the comments, and we'll see what we can do. And a lot of things are fun to go up against each other. Okay, here we go. What one thing you want Make It or Break It to know? Okay, this is an interesting one. What's the one thing you want Make It or Break It to be known for in the DIY community? Okay. All right. So the mission of my channel is this, and I'm not so keen. I've done so many missions over the years with so many organizations, and it's a lot of fluff. And anybody who's gone through the process, maybe you agree with me, maybe you don't. But all said and done, what I'm trying to do with Make It or Break It is several things. I'm trying to share all the hard lessons learned through my professional experience, and there's a lot of them, so that you don't make the same mistakes I do or I have. You make your own, or you make new ones. That's the one thing that I used to tell the science advisors all the time. I said, I don't care if you make mistakes. Everybody's going to make mistakes. I said, but learn from other people's experiences, because life is too short to make all the mistakes yourself. Now, I have teenagers, or I have 20-something children now. And no matter how many times I try to get them to make new mistakes and not make some of the ones I have, some things you just got to do on your own. And it's just part of life, I guess. And so accepting that is challenging. The other thing is I'm trying to get everybody, no matter if you're a teenager and you're just getting into technology, or you're somebody in your 80s and you just want to find some things that are going to work for you and make your life a little easier. I'm all about trying to share and provide you thoughts and ideas on that kind of stuff, and how to make your life easier, and to give you, the DIYer, or even the person that wants to be a DIYer and doesn't know where to start, the skill set or the confidence to succeed. So if I can do that, then victory for everybody, not just me. Let's see. Okay, that's pretty much all the questions, and we're about 83 minutes in. So anyway, any last questions from anybody? Okay, I don't see any. All right, so thank you for sticking around. If you have, or if you looked at this live stream, or if you missed the live stream and you're looking at the recording, welcome. I'm going to do more of these now that I've kind of figured some things out. There's some things I got to tweak, but I really think it's great to have this kind of engagement. I'm used to it. I loved it in my professional life, and I love it now. And so keep those questions coming. I read the comments as much as I can. So thanks for watching. Stay tuned. A lot of great ideas, thoughts, and things are going to go on. I'd love to get a sponsor or somebody or a group of people to give me an exoskeleton, because with people, as they're getting on, I've got a friend out in Colorado, and he skis, and I'm saying, someday you're going to have an exoskeleton. It's going to look like a pair of pants. You're going to slide it on, and you're going to be able to ski as well as your 20-something kids are. And he kind of chuckles, but I think we're getting close to something like that. So any kind of neat technology like that that can help make people's lives better without overwhelming them or making, like the AI and the robots, there's extremes to everything. I'm game, and please send me your stuff and I'll take an honest look at it and we'll post it so that all the viewers out there can benefit from the experience. Take care and see you next time.